So what I want to talk about today is expansion that we did for a client to capital projects to handle programs inside of TRIRIGA. But to start off, I'm Tracy Jefferson. I see a few familiar faces out there I already know. I will go ahead and shamelessly plug Facebook page TRIRIGA around the world. If you're on Facebook and not a member, you might want to join. There are, as of this morning, I think 866, 67, I don't know if you've looked. And we have a lot of people all over the planet that come there and share ideas and answer solutions. So definitely think about going out there. I've been with the TRIRIGA product since 2004. Go back quite a ways, back to TRIRIGA itself before I became a part of the company. And have worked in literally a couple of dozen countries with TRIRIGA. When I worked for IBM, I worked all over the Middle East and Africa, helping support the TRIRIGA ecosystem. And I'm with Newmark Knight Frank now. And I was the leader of our TRIRIGA Center of Excellence, and now I am leader of our Innovations and Solutions team that looks across products and markets and different ideas, not just TRIRIGA, but how does IoT and Watson and AI all come into play here, some of those things. Now, this is about, it's kind of a focus on retail, but there's similar business models out there like with restaurants and other types of businesses where you have lots of locations scattered all over the place, different geographic locations maybe, or around the world. And if we look at what a program versus a project, you know, in capital projects, you have this very deep, great thing. It's called a project container. And in the project container, you are keeping a lot of details on projects. And a project under Project Management Institute is something that has scope, schedule, and budget. It has a defined scope of work, it has a beginning, it has an end, and it has budget. A program is different, because a program can be never ending. It doesn't have to end. It's groups of projects together. Typically, they're related. So, an example of that might be a corporate center might actually be a program, the annual maintenance. You can also have something like we have, one I've seen is parking lots. Retailers in particular. I have 5,000 locations. Next year, we have enough money to go through and resurface 1,000 parking lots. And that's one program with 5,000 projects. So some of the examples around typical retail use of capital projects. Part of that's going to be corporate complexes. We have usually not that many in retail. We have a corporate support centers, we have corporate headquarters. We do some new construction, lots of more renovation type of work, maybe ongoing maintenance programs that are capital maintenance versus just typical day-to-day maintenance. And programs in these campuses are, we're going to go to 15 buildings or even 5 buildings. We're going to do an HVAC upgrade, replacement, windows, parking lots, things such as that. Another case that we see, of course, like distribution centers. Again, you don't have very many, but they're huge facilities. You might be building a new one, or you're doing renovation, capital project. Might be something that's, we're going to go through and put in more intelligent belt feeding systems, things like that. We don't have a whole lot of programs around distribution centers usually. We don't see those as often. The third case, of course, are stores. We have lots of stores, locations. We may have a lot of new stores. Maybe we have disposition taking place. A lot of times there's churn in those locations as demographics shift. Maybe we close one location, open another, or we're growing, so we go out and identify 25 sites and maybe we build on 20. All right, so those kinds of projects are out there. A lot of times you have store renovations, you have store improvement, all these kinds of things are going on. And then for programs, again, my parking lot example comes up. Maybe we're doing HVAC improvements, possibly new frontage, new signage. These things are really programs out there that are maybe small projects individually, but all together are a pretty good sized program. And the one we're going to talk a lot about that we did for a client is my fourth example, which are store improvement. We want to go through one of my favorite, there's actually two really big ones I've heard, but one of my favorite is we're going to go through and put in 2,000 cosmetics counters. I have 10,000 locations. We've come up with a new design for a cosmetic counter. We're gonna roll that out in 2,000 locations. Those are individual projects, but they roll up under program for funding purposes and for tracking. A lot of times in this case, we get into large numbers of bids and multiple vendors. So if I'm a retailer with 6,000 locations, I may have vendors in different geographic regions that are preferred vendors, or maybe I have multiple preferred vendors that I want to bid against it, but I'm not going to have a vendor that only has a presence in the Southwest bid on the Northeast, so I have to divvy this program up, if you will. I need to split it into geographical regions and invite different vendors. It's something that we're out to see a lot now. So let's talk about our business case. I'm going to go to my cosmetics counter. I'm a program manager. And as a program manager, I have a problem. I need to go to 2,000 of my locations. I need to manage all these different projects that are happening under there, know what their status is, know what the risks are, their issues. I need to know who's bidding on them, who I've invited, what's it going to cost, what am I paying each of my vendors, who have I given contracts to. And I don't want to go into TRIRIGA Capital Projects and open one project up and look and see the details, open another project up and look and see the details, try putting that one on for 2,000 locations. Not going to happen. So out of the box, anybody use TRIRIGA Capital Projects now? No, okay. So out of the box, at the program level, what TRIRIGA does is it's very rudimentary. TRIRIGA programs gives me three things. It gives me a way to take projects and link them together to this overarching thing, this program. It gives me the ability to create sub-programs, which of course contain their own projects. And then the third thing that it does is it gives me a multi-year funding mechanism. It gives me a way to know what buckets of money are being pulled in. When you get to programs, especially if you get to something around corporate headquarters or a new complex, even a new store, I may have buckets of money out there from different sources who are providing money. So how am I going to pay for all this? And capital projects and programs allows you to track that and allocate that. And it crosses multiple fiscal years. And it also does not force an end. Because programs can be ongoing, they can be never ending in theory. And often they are, especially when you get to complexes where you're doing annual maintenance planning. So TRIRIGA does that. But what TRIRIGA doesn't do from a program standpoint is anything else. As a program manager, I can go in and see a list of 2,000 projects. I can't see much about them though, other than funding allocations. I can't go in and see and look up my contracts. I can't look up invoices. I can't look up bidding. I have to go to the individual project level. And when you're managing thousands of these, and our client in one case, they had a project, or a program, excuse me, where they had to go to over 6,000 stores. And they had to replace biohazard disposal safes. So if you see those, you see them in airports and all, where you put new needles or syringes, things like that, toxic biohazards. The rules changed on that by the FDA of what those had to be, how they were constructed. They had to replace over 6,000 of them. Those are individual projects. They're small projects, but they're still projects to go into every single one of those locations, remove the old, do some touch-up work, put the new one on. But it's with 6,000 of them, and it all had to be done in a fairly short period of time. How does a program manager know what's going on? Out of the box, TRIRIGA doesn't do this very well. It really is geared toward this great thing called capital projects. Programs literally was an afterthought. I was one of the people who helped design that original programs interface to solve a problem of at least just knowing what constitutes a program and how much money is allocated across all the projects within a program without details. So we want to solve that problem. The solution we used is, number one, we created an offline form that lets multiple people submit locations to be part of a program. The example of this is, in the United States, I have geographical regions. I have regional managers, was my business case. I have a Southwest regional manager. So we've said, guys, in our case, we had 9,000 stores. We are going to put in 2,000 new cosmetics accounts. We want you, Mr. Regional Manager, to pick the stores that you think should get that in their region. So all the regional managers got an offline form. If you're not familiar with offline, it's an Excel Word or spreadsheet that is filled out. It has protected cells, it has open cells. They fill out the open cells, they email it into the system, and the system processes it in. So this program manager sent each of the regional managers this form and said, you pick the stores that you want from the list to be included. So of course the regional managers picked every store they really thought. We got about 4,000 stores nominated. Now the program manager, though, in one place sees every single store nominated, and this individual went in and contacted the different regional managers and said, okay, come on, this store is really not a super performing store. We're not going to make a huge investment here. And they worked it out to get it down to a couple thousand. But this was done in one place. They weren't having to go dig. So it's a really nice mechanism. The other thing is bidding from the program level. Right? I have a program that I'm going to send out to 2,000 people. It has the same list of tasks to do. Here's what I want you to do. All right? I need people to bid on it. Now, this is where I get into, I have to create a bid sheet. And if you've ever looked at capital projects inside of TRIRIGA, okay, you create a bid for the project and say, here's my cost codes, here's the line items I want on there, and Mr. Vendor, here's our 5 vendors, I just picked 5, send those out, give me your answers back, and we do it through offline, again through Excel. So all vendors receive the same bid sheet. They fill it in, they send it back in, the system lets you do a comparison, you pick who to award it to. Project by project, it's not too bad. 2,000 cosmetics counters, the rules just changed. So what we did was, from the bidding, we actually said, okay, this vendor, or these vendors are being asked to bid on these 200 stores perhaps. Maybe it's a bigger number. So we created a single bid sheet in the program side that contains all of those locations, and it goes to those vendors only for those locations. Now they get a lot of line items. If they're invited to bid on, say, 200 locations, the bid sheet contains however many line items, how many cost line items you have. Maybe it's just 3 or 4. In this case, usually it's pretty small. So maybe it's 3 or 4 for 200 stores. Now they have it, with 4, they have 800 line items. But the vendors actually like that. They get one sheet, the locations are sorted. Here's location 1, all of its line items. Location 2, all of its line items. And they're able to sit down, they fill their bids in, send it in, it comes into the system. The program manager has not left the program. They're not looking into the program to see that. So that was important for us. And the big thing is the project container. The project container in TRIRIGA is, you have a project, here's all the gory details about that individual project. All right? So we'll talk about that a little bit more, because we take this big old bid sheet that we just created with 200 projects on it, we still disperse that down into the individual projects. I want to maintain the integrity of that project tracking, because I want to be able to go to a location 6 months from now, 6 years from now, and see when we did that and see all the details. So we maintain that integrity all through, whether it's the contract bidding, we maintain it through the actual contract itself, and then when we go back, the same thing. We want to see it at the program level. I want my program manager to see all the gory details in one spot, but we want to maintain the integrity of TRIRIGA's project container. So, my business case. I am a program manager. I want to see my bid request. Okay. I've sent out requests for bids to vendors. I want to see who's responded. I want to see any, like the request for proposals, purchase orders, contracts, anything to do with all of the projects associated to the program. Again, I don't want to drill down. I do not want to go open an individual project and see project number 1, then have to go to 2 and 3. I want to stay inside my project or program and be able to see this. So I have general contractor bids. I have general contractors' actual contracts issued. I have what's called, this case is called an NAI quote. This is something the customer calls. It's really more of a request for a bid, a request for a quote, and then actual purchase orders issued. This was added to the program form. If you go into programs now, you won't see any of this, but if you, in capital projects, you see something very similar. But we pulled that up to that higher level. One-stop shopping. Program manager needs to manage that program. I don't need them spending all day long clicking on a computer trying to figure something out. Another thing, as we're going through these projects, our vendors out in the field, maybe our local project managers are seeing risk. They're identifying risk to my projects. I have 2,000 projects in flight right now for cosmetics counters. I am not, as a program manager, I need to be aware of things that could impact my projects failing, which could impact the overall success or failure of the program. I do not want to go in and look around all these different projects and try to dig and find risk. So at the program level, I want to open this up and see that I have a list of risks that have been identified. Same thing goes for issues. Where have I identified issues already that need to be tracked and found? I don't want to go through individual projects. So it's simple. We added sections. We added a whole tab onto the program level. Again, if you've been in capital projects inside of TRIRIGA, this is familiar. You have risk, you have issues. Just like the earlier screen, you have contracts and bids and purchase orders, requests for quotes. All those things are at the project level, but we want it at the program level. As a program manager, I haven't left my program screen yet. As a program manager, as I talked a little bit about earlier, I have to create all these projects, and I want to do that easily. I'm not going to sit here and go click location 1, click location 2, click location 3. We don't want to do that. I want to let the people out there, and maybe it's one person. It could actually be one person, but again, maybe it's regional managers, somebody submit their projects. So we created a process, right? And that process is, I put a system admin actually is on this chart, just because that person we have to have that initial Excel file that'll let us do that. The program manager emails this out. It's got a program ID. If you haven't worked with offline, there's something unique about it. It's going to have a program ID on there. And I'll show you an example. And then what I call the submitter here, maybe that's a regional manager, maybe that's a vice president, could be C-suite, who knows. Whoever that is. They're going to go in, identify the locations they want as part of this program. They send it into the system brings it in. I, as a program manager, see that. Now, these aren't part of my program yet because I'm going to have a look at it. As I was saying earlier, a good example is I said I have room for 2,000 new cosmetics counter. The regional managers come back and my total is 4,000. That doesn't work for my funding. We're going to fix this. So before we make this real, I'm going to cut that list down, make it what I want, and then I'm going to say, make this a program. And what we did then is the system actually goes out and builds all these projects for us. Now, when I talked about the medical safe replacement that had 6,000, of course, those of you who use TRIRIGA, and if you use capital projects, activating a capital project takes several minutes in some cases to do. So we actually told them, okay, if you're going to activate a program with 6,000 projects, why don't you just click that off on a Friday afternoon and see you Monday morning? It's not going to happen in 5 minutes. It does have a system demand. There's a performance thing to understand about just how complex these get. And if you get into where you have lots of cost codes on this program, if I'm going to put 50 line items and I'm going to send out bids and create projects with 50 line items and 6,000 different projects, now I have 30,000 line items total in the system. So you can see the processing time can get a little bit slow. But I'll tell you what, try doing that manually. Try creating this whole list and see how many days or even weeks. The client that implemented this, they actually would spend the entire Q3 putting this kind of stuff together to go into Q4 budget process. All right, they literally spend months. And now it's fairly painless in terms of level of effort. This is an Excel form. This is what goes out. One of the things we do is you have, there's a program ID that's put up there. We actually apply a capital project template to it. We're going to say, when you disperse this program, you build all these projects, use a certain template. That's going to tell us all the cost codes, and they're going to tell us the task and everything else to use. All right. Submitted by, and then the location. Those are 3 location IDs and the date they want to start. That is a general rule, is all the people in the field are putting in, location codes. Now, you can actually have those as a list value in the spreadsheet if you want. So they just go through and do a pick on it if they want. It depends. We actually didn't make it a pick list because the managers that were going to get this, they know their store IDs. Before they could find it, they could just type it. And that was their request, just let us type it. Of course, that creates a potential for human error, but we'll take that compared to sitting around trying to type out thousands and thousands of line items. I want to apply a standard bid template. Similar thing. If you go into Capital Projects module and you say to do a bid, you can apply a template that says here's all the cost codes that need to be on my template, send it out. We move that up to the program level. So all projects get the same template, and it's all goes into the bid. So my 2,000 cosmetics counters, I have 2,000 projects, 2,000, each of those projects has a bid that ends up in it. And of course, one of the things there is that standard bid template, yes, but you can have multiple bids associated with the program. Because I may invite regions, or maybe I have some certain vendors I invite for pieces of the program. However you need to do that, you can build it out using the standard bid template. And by the way, the color coding on this that you've seen is, you'll see blue, green, yellow, red. Blue are either manual processes or something that exists out of the box in TRIRIGA. Green is a lightweight configuration, maybe changing labels, names, or a query or something. Yellow, it means we're in there making changes to the workflows behind it, but again, not too heavy. If we get to red, it's either really serious configuration changes or a lot of new configuration. So that's where you see the red boxes, and if we back up, I should have explained that when I started, but that was just to kind of flag things. Red says, guys, not only does that mean we're going to make changes today, there's a long-term cost of ownership of that. If you guys as TRIRIGA users know, once you go off the upgrade path, you've got a cost of ownership to maintain. So we actually tend to color code those so that we can sit with our business users and say, okay, are you willing to pay the price to have this functionality? In this case, they were. And all that bidding process really is again, I apply that bid template. I pick the stores, the locations that I want to use. I pick my vendors that I want to invite. And when I send it out, they all come back. Now, one thing that we did in this particular case too that's different from capital projects out of the box. Inside of TRIRIGA, when you send a bid out, then the vendor replies back using the offline method, the Excel spreadsheet. It shows you, here's all the bids I've received, and here's how much those bids were. One issue around that, we actually stopped that from being seen because of SOX. We lock a bid. Once a bid goes out, one thing that we did in there is it fires it off, and that the project manager and the program manager can no longer touch that. They can't see the numbers come in. The bid actually unlocks when the vendors have replied. Or if we meet a due date. When we get to the due date, it'll unlock. All right, but we actually keep the numbers invisible during the bidding process because of Sarbanes-Oxley. Again, one thing that's different, if you look at a project inside capital projects, you see all the bids. At the program level, you have something a little different. You can see there's all the projects that are part of this bid, and then you have all the bid responses that are under there. just taking it up just one more level higher. Very similar to project level bidding. Who's the contact for the bid? And then the cost form. So this could be very lengthy. So the cost form is, I have 2,000 cosmetics counters, I have 4 line items each, I might have 8,000 rows here. But that's awesome. Because I'm not going to go to 2,000 projects and look for 4 rows in each of my projects. I have one place to go find it. And those of you that as TRIRIGA users, you're going to filter that list down to a location anyway. You never leave the program form. We haven't left the program form yet. This is an example of a bid form. You can see here I have 2 line items for each of my projects. So line 1 is really, it's a grouping. I want to keep all these together. I have plumbing and paving on both, but they're for different locations. It can get long and wordy for a vendor to respond to, but again, they're not going to want to go in per location and respond. They can respond to everything they've been invited to bid against all at once. Contract invoice, okay, kind of the same thing. I have a project, a contract, I have different cost codes that they bill back against. So I want to be able to send in one invoice, and I want to do it electronically. We do it through offline is really nice for this because vendors don't have to have licenses, they don't have to be users, they don't need much training. They have an Excel spreadsheet with only columns they're allowed to change and lock. They put their numbers in, they send it in, the system process. And we end up with this in our system so that we can see where we are. Now, the end result, especially from bidding, is I can have multiple projects on a single bid. They're not going to send in, the guy that we invited to do 200 different locations is not going to send in 200 bids. One for each location, he's sending me one bid sheet. And one bid sheet for 200 locations. If I have 4 lines, okay, it's got 800 lines. That's all right, it's in one spot. We can split bid or split award, actually, of the program. I don't have to go to 1 or 2 vendors and say, okay, it's all yours. In capital projects, you pick a vendor, you award a contract. In this case, I'm actually going to parse this out. So I can manage multiple contracts against a program for different projects that are within the program. One-stop shopping. And I can individually invoice back against the projects. The key thing at the end of the day, again, is to reiterate, we're maintaining the project container integrity. So I can go to that, of those 2,000 cosmetics counters, I can go to one project, open it up, and I can see that individual project's bid, its invoicing, where it stands, the cost codes, everything. So my project managers get what they need, my program manager gets the big picture. And then the other thing we did, and it was interesting, they brought this up on the roadmap the other day, that they're going to do some bulk update utilities to capital projects. Well, that's nice, we've already done that. Because as a program manager, again, I'm not going to go open an individual project, go in and change something on the schedule. Because these schedules are going to change every day. You've got thousands of in-flight projects. Nothing, come on. How many people can say that everything stayed on schedule for a whole program? Probably not. Even a whole project could look at that. Right? So what we did is we created a utility that has a find action up there on the upper right, and I go through and pick a list of all the projects I want to work on. I can pick 100. And it pulls all those tasks in, and it sorts them out into the tasks that are in draft, active, or in a revision state, brings them all up there, and it's in an editable query. So I can go through and change dates and amounts for every one of them. I could go through and pick, we'll stick with my 200. I have 200 projects out there. Maybe they have 10 work tasks each. So I have 2,000 line items on here. But I can go through and quickly make changes. I submit that, and it updates the project containers. It goes through and updates all the schedules, everything. All in one spot. That's our improvement. If you're a program manager, you should be very happy because it really makes a big difference. Any questions that I can answer? Everyone's going, it's almost 5 o'clock. Can we make him go away? Well, if there aren't any questions, I appreciate the time and thanks everybody for coming. I hope any feedback on TRIRIGA University this year? Seemed like it was really busy, a lot of good information. Oh, huh? Okay. All right, thanks everybody.